Good. Nice and awake at 11 a.m. on Easter.
I'm not usually up this early.
I didn't used to be. I was on nights until like very recently, so I
Yeah,
did
did
like
you
night
get
shift.
older? Is that why?
And then I made a switch to days. So like mid 11 used to be like early morning.
I see. Yeah. 11's early for me. I usually get up maybe like half an hour later or an hour later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm good though.
You're good. Nice and awake. I mean, I've got coffee, so I'm always good.
I don't really drink coffee. I'm more of a tea person, but I have water, so
Oh, you're one of those people.
yeah.
One of those water drinkers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, essentially, if you're all happy and good, we'll kick off and record.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's cool. You sit very still, and I keep thinking that it's frozen. You didn't even.
Oh no. Watch for like little micro expressions in my face.
Tiny expressions, just little movements of hair, and
Yeah, like lines on my face. Yeah.
whereas I'm just overly animated, so there's no way around it. But in that case, welcome to the podcast, Lex.
Hi, how are you? Graham?
Yeah, I'm Graham. I was debating whether I'd be calling you Lex or Alex.
Either way.
Because,
yeah, well, this is a professional podcast, so call me by my professional name, Lex. Yeah.
My name's always Graham.
Your name's always Graham. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I guess podcast hosts and comedians mostly use their real names. I have met very few comedians who didn't use their full last names, like first, middle, and last name if they have a middle. It's not the case with musicians. Like we're more prone to stage names.
Yeah, you do like to hide yourself behind the name and the moniker and
yeah,
whatnot.
some people more so than I do, because I consider myself more of a realist performer in that my real self and the performance self are more connected than some other people's. Like some people are just like present something completely different and then completely different, but like there is some truth to the stuff I make. It's just kind of like a more theatricalized and like exaggerated version.
That makes sense. I mean, I occasionally do it. I mean, I go by yelling at concrete online for most
Yelling at concrete. Okay.
I mean, that's the name of the podcast, and then I use it for like all my usernames.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there you go. You understand.
Yeah, but no, I don't think anyone actually calls me yelling. It's a long name to say, and it'd be weird to be called yelling or concrete.
Well, I mean, it's shorter than Lex the Lexicon Artist. I'm not gonna name myself.
That is true. I'm not going full title for you, sadly. No.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Lex is totally fine. That was what it was intended to be.
I mean, in that case, we should probably introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I like people to introduce themselves and put them on the spot a little bit. Can you tell the people listening who you are?
Sure.
What do you do?
I'm Lex the Lexicon Artist. Lex the Con Artist for short, or Lex for short. And Lex is short for Alex, not short for Alexandra. Alex is just my real name. What do? I make rap music. I make other kinds of music too. It's like a weird fusion of rap and pop, with sometimes nerdy references, other times nerdy like voicings. Yeah, I just have a really interesting and weird perspective on rap music, I guess. A lot of people that I've encountered in the mainstream space have told me that I am too nerdy sounding for the mainstream space.
Really?
But a lot of people in the nerd space have told me that I'm not nerdy enough for the nerd space. So I've kind of just ended up carving out my own path and picking up people along the way who have like some similarities and whatnot. But yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it, is like nerdy rap pop.
Yeah, I think that works. I mean, I was kind of thinking back to when I first emailed you to say, hey, do you want to come on a podcast? And it's always a bit of a weird one to receive an email out of the blue of some random person in another country saying, hey, do you want to come on a podcast?
I mean, it's more than you think.
I mean, for me, it's every day. Like that's how I live my life. But no, I was kind of thinking how I stumbled across your music in
Yeah.
such a kind of random way.
Yeah. I love hearing these stories. Like I never know how many people are listening to my things.
Yeah.
And I never know just how people discover me. Like sometimes people do it through Spotify Discover,
Hmm.
sometimes people find me on YouTube, but it's always a different story. There's some similarities in some of the stories, but I'm always very curious as to how people, end up discovering me because I'm never aware of how far my content has spread.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you can relate to this too. Like, something out of the blue, someone just comes out and messages me or emails me saying, "Hey, I'm from this place," and then I saw
Yeah.
your thing and I thought it was cool. And it's always very like kind of like a jaw dropping, surprising moment for me. So I enjoy hearing it.
I do love the ones when you kind of you look into like the analytics or anything of something you've done, and you see one just like in a random country, and you're like, how? How did it make it? Who in Sweden is listening to me
Yeah,
at
yeah,
any one point in time? Um,
yeah.
so I found you through a tweet,
Oh, there
as
we
is
go.
the best way. There you go. I'll tell the story. Um, so I found you a tweet from Beefy, the
Ah,
rapper, who
yeah,
had tweeted
yeah.
your latest album, Lex in the City.
Uh-huh.
And then I'd seen that, and I kind of clicked on that because he's one of the kind of nerdcore rappers who I was really into, and I followed him on Twitter for ages, and I was like, oh, good suggestions usually come from them. Click on that, and then I ended up listening to your album in one shot. Like it wasn't like I picked on a song and then kind of went, oh, that's good. I'll have a listen to that later. No, it was just like clicked it on, and then I realized I'd made it to the end of the album. I was like, I need to talk to this person.
When you say album, do you mean Lex in the City? You listen to
Yeah.
it in one go? Yeah, it's 30 minutes. It's not that difficult of a
It's
listen.
not. But I think it surprised me because the way I listen to music is like you say with this with Discover and like playlists and stuff like that. I don't tend to stick to one. It's been a while since I listened to an album all the way through.
Yeah, that's the modern way of consuming music is like
Yeah.
singles and yeah, one shots. I'm a little bit old school in that way in that I still like making albums. I like making stuff with a cohesive like either story or a common thread, like a
Hmm.
thematic thread. And then like my fans consume media that way. A lot of them like listening to entire albums,
Yeah.
and that's what I do to serve their interests. But I'm really glad that I was able to break your typical consumer habits of listening to a single.
I think that's it's good though because like in back in the day when I was young and fresh faced, um, not decaying like I am now. Um, when I was listening to music, I would listen to a whole album. That was it. So my tastes have changed through the years to consume music. So it was kind of nice to just be reminded of that and just say, oh, here's a whole album to listen to. And then yeah, I
Exactly.
went
Yeah.
went through that and then ended up listening to most of your catalog
Yeah.
because yeah.
It's not that much either. Yeah, I
Uh,
started making music in 2017, so
yeah.
which is at this point 4 years ago. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's been 4 years. Wow, crazy. It feels like no time at all.
Well,
Yeah,
we
I
lost a year. You got to remember.
we did lose a year. That was a dummy year. It was
Yeah,
a it was
didn't
a
count.
it was a lemon. No, that's not the word. What's that golf word?
I
Shoot,
can't
what
quite
is that golf word? Do you play golf?
remember. No.
uh
All I can think of is birdie and eagle, and that's for like getting the thing in the hole, right? I think.
yeah. There's one term for golf where it's like, oh, this term doesn't
Right.
count.
Okay.
And I can't for the life of me think of the word right now. I might have to open up my text and then because like this is bothering me. Like I need to find out what it is. Okay.
It's a
Okay.
do-over, maybe.
No, but that's not it. Okay, what is
It's
it?
just a repeat.
Oh, it's a mulligan.
A
Okay,
mulligan. Okay. See,
mulligan.
I didn't know that was a
Everybody
golf
is a
term.
mulligan. Yeah. Apparently,
All
it's
right.
just it's a term that doesn't count.
It's a mulligan. We did a mulligan. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, we did a mulligan.
Yeah.
Sounds very Irish, right? Is that an
Yes.
Irish word
Well,
or is
well, golf's Scottish.
oh golf Scottish? Okay,
Yeah. So I'm guessing it's more Scottish.
okay, it is Scottish. But yeah, my catalog is not very long.
Hmm.
It is definitely consumable.
How
It's
many
it's
albums do you have
something.
now? Then?
It's two full albums, one kind of full album, like the Lex and the City is kind of like it's it's an EP. It's 30 minutes,
Yep.
which counts as an EP, and then 2 full-length albums and a bunch of other singles. But it's certainly shorter than Beefy's catalog. Yeah,
I mean, he's been running for a while.
he's been running for a while, and he is great people, and I love that guy.
He has such an. I think I got into Nerdcore ages ago. Like, must be
You a
like.
millennial?
Am I a millennial?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm 31.
31
Yeah,
millennial.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm right at the beginning of millennial.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 20. I'm almost 27. I'm turning 27 this year, and I consider myself a millennial. 1994. That's like right between millennial and Gen Z. Right at the cusp of millennial and Gen Z.
Yep.
I'd rather not associate. Actually, I think it's Gen Y. Or is Gen Y and millennial the same thing? It
I
might
think
be.
I lose track. Like,
Okay.
I think Y and millennial may be the same thing because it's Gen X before us, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So millennials and then Gen Z, right? I believe Gen Z starts 1996,
Yeah.
and then a millennial ends 1994. So I consider myself a millennial.
I don't think I had a chance to classify myself. I think someone else, like the media, did it for us.
Yeah. But I really feel like at home with the millennial label. I don't know what it is,
Okay.
but I don't really feel like a 90s kid because I was born in the mid 90s. So most of the 90s, I was still a toddler. So I don't really feel that, connection with a lot of the 90s media, um, especially not American or Western 90s media. So I don't have that nostalgia factor. But I relate to a lot of things that millennials relate to. For example, as you said, listening to full albums, buying CDs, growing up during the time where LimeWire started to come on the scene, and just downloading MP3 files full of viruses.
I mean,
all this stuff.
I was literally on your Instagram today because I was like doing some pre-research and I saw you had like a link for Napster,
Hmm?
and it blew my mind because I was just like, Napster. I haven't heard of Napster in it's gonna be 15 years or so.
Oh, I think it's because my distributor automatically uploads to Napster. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever used Napster. I only use LimeWire for pirating stuff.
Yeah.
And
Not that we condone pirating, obviously. We should pay artists. That's the rule.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna pirate, you should may as well run the roulette of LimeWire. Why not?
Feel free to I don't condone pirating for small artists or whatever. I highly recommend pirating highly recommend pirating stuff that is like is already famous. Not okay. You might want to edit this part out, but like
Oh no, we don't backtrack on this podcast.
Okay. But yeah, I'm kind of a proponent of free internet, and I think the internet should be free. I was just at a conference that argued the same thing. I think the internet should be free, and personally, as an artist, I don't have problems with people consuming my things for free. I think that if people want to consume it for free, then they will, and then and I can't stop them about it. So I've accepted it, and I actually embrace it now. And there are plenty of people who want to pay for my content. And if that's the case, then they will absolutely pay for it in droves, which has happened. And I embrace those fans who pay for the things in in like a more enthusiastic way, if that makes sense. Like, I make sure to reward them for the dedication that they're showing to the project. I invite Patreons on my Discord channel so they can engage with me personally. So I definitely show like a preferential treatment of people who choose to support me, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to gate everything to like payment. Like, people should be able to consume my content for free. Like, even though that wasn't the model in the past, where in order to listen to music you had to buy CDs, that is the model now. Most music is consumed for free, and you have to like live with it and find other ways to monetize. So that's my outlook on it. But yes, do support small artists who need your money on Bandcamp Fridays. But pirate a gigantic anime that has a huge following. Like, I don't have a problem with that.
No, I think I discussed this. So on the first podcast of the year, me and my brother sat down and discussed a lot of kind of nostalgic TV. and different things we were missing from the past. And both of us were saying the problem we have is finding things which we want to watch from the past which don't have a physical or purchasable proponent to them,
Yep. Yep.
and just really struggling with it. So you end up pirating it. You end up finding in like the weirdest little places and someone's, wee little Reddit thread where
Yeah.
you're kind of digging around and like, oh, well, this guy's just got it to download from his house.
Yeah.
I guess we'll risk it and get a little zip file and see what happens with it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of forced us into that little corner. It's strange.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the same thing, the same effect that the streaming platforms have forced us into as well.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times we find ourselves trying to find like the thing that we want to watch on a service that we subscribe to, and it's like, no, it's not on Netflix, but it's on HBO Max. It's like, oh crud, I have to subscribe to another thing again, and it's just piecemeal, right? You end up subscribing to a whole bunch of things. Like, who needs cable anymore? You just subscribe to HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, and at this point it's just kind of easier to own the things, right? Even if you're not technically doing it legally, just have it on your computer, right? It's just you don't even own the things that you watch on streaming services. Like even the movies that you buy on Amazon Prime, you don't own them. It's just like you're paying to get access to them. That's all.
It's just we slowly drip fed content. I think that's the new. It is like you say though. That is the new business model. I mean, that's essentially how even with my visual art stuff. I mean, I do the podcast for free. I don't monetize it in any way, shape, or form because I think it's one of those ones which is more about discussion than any kind of profiteer or anything I could ever do with it. So it's just to bring people into that discussion, and then that pushes people towards other things I create, which then they spend money on.
Yeah. What other things do you create?
So I do all sorts. So I recently took up my painting again.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
But I do illustration and I create I'm currently creating the second edition of a graphic novel which I did about potatoes. I do all sorts.
That's exciting. I am useless. I'm useless at drawing. Like I
Right.
could do like computer graphics. I'm a Photoshop pro. I'm learning Illustrator right now.
Nice.
And I'm also learning After Effects, and I'm also very good at Premiere Pro. But none of that is relevant to illustration. But I
I don't
am
know. Illustrator is.
Illustrator
It's
is.
graphic
I'm
design.
useless to at drawing by hand, so I don't know if I can ultimately get really good at it. But I think it's possible, just
Yeah.
being able to do like computer stuff.
It,
But yeah.
it, it is completely possible. I mean, my background's fine art and all those kinds of things and film and photography. And I was taught from a fine art aspect. So I had the exact opposite struggle of adapting to digital technologies
I
and
see.
adapting to anything graphic design. I really struggled with it. And you kind of have to push yourself to do it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's really interesting. I wish I was good at drawing because I love fan art and I love just art in general. I love people who are able to draw human beings and their limbs in a proportional way. And I'm always so jealous of them. Like, how do you do that? Every time I try to draw a human, it just doesn't look right.
It's weird you say that though, because I mean, I know I can draw a proportioned human, yet every human I draw is not proportioned. I go out of my way to make them unproportioned or to add human aspects to inanimate objects.
But you have to know how to draw and proportion human before you decide to mess with the
Yeah,
proportions. I think that's what it is.
that there. Oh, there's a great Picasso quote about that. Because he did obviously cubist and abstract paintings and all those kinds of things, but he can paint classically. He can paint like Renaissance style paintings.
Yeah.
And the quote from him was along the lines of, I learned to paint like a master to then learn how to paint like a child."
Yeah, that's cool. I
Like
like that.
that's what you need. But that's the trick of creating anything. You have to learn to do the really good bit to make it sound effortless.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's isn't that something that that isn't that something that Monet tried to do as well, where he got tired of making of drawing realistic portraits and painting realistic things, so he decided to get into impressionism, which is not trying to make things realistic, but capturing the way the light kind of lands on certain things at a certain moment. I think I read something about that about
Yeah.
Monet, or maybe I was reading about Debussy, who essentially impressionist music is kind of imitating impressionist fine art. So maybe it was Debussy. I don't
I
remember.
don't know much about Debussy.
Yeah, Debussy's amazing. I love Debussy. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question for you. Like in terms of kind of music and stuff, what is your day-to-day music at the moment?
Right now it's video game music.
Okay.
I get stuck on um like certain like a very specific thing at a time.
Right.
I don't use Spotify as much as people would think I use. My brother listens to more music than I do, I'm sure. Like, my brother is a big music fan. He loves all things like pop and hip hop. And he uses Spotify Discover every day. For me, I discover something like a video game I really like, and then I listen to the soundtrack for like 3 weeks, and then I move on to something else. So right now, I'm really crazy about the Undertale soundtrack because I
Okay.
just finished playing that game, and it is a fantastic game. I have a Twitch channel where I play games. It's separate from my music career, but it's fun. I'm able to build a community and get some of my fans over to watch me play games. And they asked me to play this game called Undertale, and it was a really popular game in 2016 and 2015. And for some reason, I had never been spoiled on it. I had never seen any spoilers except for like the meme that came out of it, which
Okay.
Sans and Megalovania. I don't know if you're familiar with those things, but I ended up playing the game, loved it. It was just such a beautiful game. It's crafted with so much love. And the best thing about it was the soundtrack. And I'm still on that kick even after finishing the game.
That's so cool,
So
though.
yeah, right now that's that. But I listen to a variety of things. As I just said, I listen to classical. Classical is not technically it's the term that's used for all that entire period, but
Yeah.
really Debussy's an impressionist pianist and musician, and Beethoven's a romantic period composer. It's not accurate to call them classical, but let's just say classical. I grew up with classical music. I
Yeah.
was a classically trained musician, so
Okay.
I listened to a lot of that stuff. I didn't end up going through with it because the way that I was brought up to like play violin as like, okay, like you have to practice and you have to get better, it was like wasn't the best experience. And I feel like if it had gone a different way, I would have had a better experience with it. But it was it definitely was an important part of my childhood and formed a big part of who I am today.
Yeah.
Learning violin, that is. So classical is a big part of my brain repertoire. And then other stuff I listen to rap, obviously, but it's not all I listen to.
Mhm.
I listen to a lot of pop music, and I listen to when I was in high school, I love like alternative metal, alternative rock, that sort of thing. Mostly like poppy bands. Like I loved Avenged Sevenfold in high school, like just like completely obsessed. I've seen them twice
I
live.
like that you associate Avenged Sevenfold with the term poppy.
They're poppy. They're pop metal.
I feel like there's just like a large wave of Avenged Sevenfold fans who may have heard that and be like, "What? This is heavy." And there's a group of metal fans nearby just, no, she's right. She's right. It's poppy.
Metal fans are gonna agree with me that they're pop metal. They are.
Yeah. To me, they
Yeah,
fall into the same category as the likes of Trivium, who I
yeah.
also class as pop metal. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that it would be inaccurate to call myself a metalhead because I don't listen to proper metal. I listen to things like Avenged Sevenfold.
I
And
don't
yeah,
know. I mean, you get people who listen to like Newfound Glory and they class themselves as punk. So
okay, yeah.
you could be a
I see where
metalhead.
you're going with
Yeah,
this. People who listen to Green Day call themselves punk.
exactly. If you can
Yeah,
listen to Green Day and still consider yourself punk, I think we can allow Avenged Sevenfold fans to be
to
metal.
consider that they're metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love them. They got me out of some really hard times in high school. I
Yeah.
didn't have the best school experience, middle school and high school, kind of a wash for me. But yeah, that band is just something else. Their music is just it's just so angry and aggressive, and it really helped me get out of get out some bad feelings at the time. So they have a very special place in my heart. I still listen to them when I have hard times. So yeah, I know pretty much most of their songs in their all of their songs in their catalog up to Nightmare, which is from 2010. And then afterwards, like I kind of fell off the wagon, but uh yeah, I love that band.
Fell off the
Uh,
bandwagon.
oh, a
I like
band that I
that.
got into recently is Nine Inch Nails.
Oh
Uh,
right, okay.
yeah, because I was dating a person who had that as their favorite band,
Right.
and I got really into them, and I started, going all the way back into their catalog, and I just,
I was gonna say, if you're just getting into Nine Inch Nails, they have a long catalog. Like,
I know.
you have a few years of music just available to you now.
Yeah. It's a lot, and it's quite a lot. But I listen to Hesitation Marks, I listen to Downward Spiral, I listen to
Mhm.
Big Hate Machine. And Downward Spiral is probably still my favorite so
Yeah.
far. It's just great. It came out, I think, the year I was born, 1994, in March, so it's very close to my age.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think Trent Reznor's such a genius.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's
I'd
just
fully agree. Like Downward Spiral is one of my top favorite albums. So
he's just brilliant, and
yeah,
he's making film scores now. Like the social
yeah.
network film score is brilliant. I don't know if you watch Soul from Pixar, but he
I
composed
haven't yet.
on that film, and it's so good. Like he and Atticus Ross were some key composers on that film, and I just don't understand how he does it. It's just like this man's like a virtuoso.
He's weirdly like modest as well. I remember
Yeah,
remember seeing I think he was essentially given an award, and I think it was something like the Lifetime Achievement Award or something like that.
yeah.
And he got it, and he was just like, "Why are you giving this to me? I'm only like 40 something. I've got plenty of time left." And it was like, "Stop trying to put a nail in my coffin, and I'm gonna go make more music." Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think
that man's brilliant.
it's quite strange. Like so you're, I mean, you say you turned 27 this year,
Yeah.
so you're quite young in terms of the rap scene. One would
Yeah,
suggest.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I am. I mean, there's a lot of mainstream rappers that are 20 years old and
Mhm.
already like huge, but like that's a completely different scene altogether.
Yeah,
As far as the nerdcore scene goes, I'm pretty young.
yeah.
So, there's starting to be people younger than me, but they all belong to like the YouTube category of nerdcore rap. It's apparently separated now.
It is. So this is it's like I got thinking about this. Like when we were mentioning Beefy, it was just like the rappers I got into with Nerdcore seemed to be basically the end of my getting into Nerdcore. Like I got into maybe 4 or 5 different artists.
Mm-hmm,
So people like MC Frontal Art,
mm-hmm.
Schaefer Outlawed, I classed Samus in there as well,
Yeah, yeah,
and just they kind of like came in, and I for like 3 years I was solidly into that,
yeah,
and then after that I just stopped listening to it.
yeah.
I don't know why, but I kept listening to rap, and I moved on to two of my favorite rappers, who Sage Francis and B Dolan, and they're part of like a Strange Famous record label.
Yeah, I do know about Sage Francis. I have a couple of friends who I believe used to work with them. Yeah, there's some overlap with the indie rap scene and the nerdcore scene.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than you might expect.
Well, I mean, I think it was last year, maybe this year. No, last year. B Dolan did a gig in Minecraft to
Yeah,
raise
there we
money,
go.
and Samus performed that, and it was just one of these moments of just like, oh yeah, Nerdcore, I completely forgot about that, and then
Oh,
suddenly
Samus.
drifted back into it, and then found your music. I was like, oh, it's all nicely coming together. That
Yeah,
took me a decade.
that's cool. I like it. And really cool that it was just from a tweet from Beefy. Yeah, Samus, all those guys that you mentioned are great, and for the most part I think I know them all personally. I don't know Samus personally, but I know all the other guys you mentioned personally, and they are great people.
I did go through kind of your YouTube
Uh-huh.
as you do when
Yeah.
you're looking at people. And it's
Yeah.
funny that you mentioned like doing fan art and creating things like that, and the
Yeah.
whole idea of kind of YouTube raps, um,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
getting into that. I was just like, I'm wondering to what extent are you creating fan art via
Um
YouTube?
so there's this whole wave of new nerdcore now. I
Okay.
don't belong to that wave. This whole wave of new nerdcore is occupied by a lot of artists that some of who are younger than I am.
Mm.
A lot of who are younger than I am, I think. Um, and their thing is to take their favorite anime and write a song about it from the perspective of one of the characters, and then
Okay.
make like a thumbnail on it, and then have it in big letters say rap. Like they just like grab a screenshot of like their favorite show, and then they put like a huge bold letters like rap on there. And then this apparently works. Like they get a lot of people who are looking for a rap about their favorite anime characters. Like, oh, what do I want to do today? YouTube suggests a Naruto rap about my favorite character, Sasuke, and it has huge letters rap on it. So I'm gonna click into it. This apparently works for, and it's managed to like game the YouTube algorithm very well. The quality of the raps is kind of it's variable. So there's some people who do really interesting things with it where they kind of combine it with their own life experiences, or they they don't necessarily talk about the story or
Yeah.
the perspective of the character, but they kind of take the theme of it and then make
Yeah.
something derivative out of it. But then there are also some YouTube rappers who are just like, I'm going to tell the entire story of the show in song, and like
Oh.
that's literally all it is. So quality is variable, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that everyone is excited about doing their thing and writing songs about things that they like. But personally, like, I don't really want to write a book report, and like I like
That's the best way to describe that.
exactly. Personally, I like making more derivative works, and
Yeah.
I like to derive more further from the source material, in kind of the way that Open Mike Eagle does. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Mm-hmm.
But Open Mike Eagle has an album called Anime, Trauma, and Divorce, and it started off as a nerdcore album. Apparently, it started
Right.
off wanting to talk about anime in each song, but his life took a turn and the pandemic happened, so he decided to make it different and talk about his trauma using anime as an inspiration. And if you
Okay.
listen to those songs and watch those videos, they barely have anything to do with the anime, but like deep fans of the anime can tell how it's influenced
Yeah.
by the anime. So like that's something that I'm trying to work towards, just like take some inspiration from the anime and um put it into a work that is like basically completely original.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have fan raps. Like I have an album about an anime called Mob Psycho 100. It's a really good show, and that is more of like a derivative, like, okay, like let's take the themes of this album and kind of tell a story but also relate it to my own life, sort of thing. And I think that I did an innovative job with it, but I mean, some people might argue the opposite, that it's just a derivative book report. So
I mean, that's the risk
yeah,
you take as an artist, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that's essentially what attracted me to your work, was that when I obviously went in on Lex in the City, and then listened to Alter Ego afterwards,
Yeah.
and kind of I worked backwards through your catalog,
Yeah.
so I ended up getting this weird experience of going, oh, so you've gone really fun with this album, and it's personal and it's great, and
Yeah.
then Alter Ego's even more personal, and
Mhm.
it's almost like more exposed and more raw, and then going back and then finding your YouTube stuff, and it was just like it's a real gradation of where you started and being an artist and that conflicting with things and going back and forth in it, and I loved that.
So I'm curious, like, what did you see on my YouTube that made it feel like things became lighter? Because I'm just curious. I would love to.
I don't know. I think what surprised me was your videos, actually,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because the first time I listened through to any of it, I listened just to the tracks, and I hadn't seen any videos. And then I saw a few of the videos, and I was like, there's a comedy element to this,
Mm-hmm.
which I hadn't considered when just listening to it. And
Yeah.
again, that kind of really, it just really surprised me, and I found it really refreshing because I was just like, oh, you've got all these really serious topics, and I've listened really hard to the words and gotten that vibe and everything like that. And then how it was presented was much lighter. And in a way, like you're saying with kind of like anime stuff, whenever I've watched animes, there's always a lot of serious stuff going on,
Mhm.
but the visuals accompanying it often are just massive contrasts to
Yeah.
everything going on.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
And you can definitely see that kind of influence into it. Like, all right.
Yeah. I think I'm very into visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Alter Ego was kind of a departure from my usual thing. I wanted to make a dark album. You know, every artist has to have a dark album.
You've got to go
Uh,
edgy at some point.
yeah, exactly. Like, every artist has to have their downward spiral. So like that was my downward spiral. But yeah, there is a comedy element
Mm-hmm.
in the stuff that I do. I'm not very funny when I'm doing like in my regular life.
Okay.
I tried my hand at stand-up comedy and I wasn't very good at it. I think that if I practice, I could be better, but it
Yeah.
seems so difficult. Like the timing of everything, and talking to people without a backing track, it just feels so difficult. And I don't know if I want to wade back into that area again.
Yeah.
But I did try my hand at stand-up comedy, and I'm not really that funny. So the only way that I can express my sense of humor, which I think I
Mm-hmm.
do have a sense of humor in that I can find things funny.
Yeah.
So I want to express that in the stuff that I create. And one of the best way to do that is through video. So, videos for like Hotel Bed or Psych Major are like
Mm-hmm.
I think are very funny. And Lex in the City was also a departure from the serious stuff and okay, let's go back into the funny stuff, right?
Well, what
Yeah.
surprised me was like the what seemed like a short time period between the two. Like, like, because I like looked at the date of Alter Ego. I was like, oh, you came in like 2020,
Yeah.
and then Lex and City. I was like, when did I find that? I was like, well, that's also the same. What? How? And it really like it struck me. I was just like, oh no, this is definitely a person who has a very broad range and a lot of things to say, and I
Oh,
kind of
for sure.
appreciated that. Of
Yeah.
like, because the way I create work constantly. Like
Yeah.
I'm never not creating things,
Yeah.
and because of that, it conflicts with itself all the time. Like one day I'm drawing something fun, and the next time I'm doing weird abstract paintings, and I was like, no, this is great. It's just it's conflicts of your own personality, just fighting for visual spotlight space.
That's what alter ego is all about,
Yeah,
right?
and it
That's
just brought it
exactly.
together. I was just like,
Yeah,
this is great.
exactly. Yeah, a fun fact, Lex in the City was written in a week.
Oh,
Uh
really?
yeah, and it was recorded in a week too.
In the same
um
week?
nah,
Okay,
separate weeks.
okay,
But I did it all in the month of August,
right.
and I got it all sent out to, to my engineer in September so that I could get it out in October, because I was afraid that when the election hit, the atmosphere was going to be too serious for me to drop a comedy album. So I had
That's
to
interesting.
basically kind of rush it,
Yeah.
and then make it like kind of a experiment for me. Like, how fast can I finish writing a record? So yeah, that might have contributed to this kind of flippant, this is just a shit post vibe of the album, because I didn't necessarily really care if it was perfect. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get it out, and I wanted something entertaining for people to grab during like a difficult time. Alter Ego was in process for 2 years. So I
Yeah.
had been writing that for 2 years before I released it in 2020. So actually there is a big there is a big space between the creation of that content, the creation of the content on Alter Ego versus the creation of content on Lex in the City.
Yeah.
There's a big separation. I'm unlike you in that after I finish writing an album and releasing it, I can't write for like another few months.
Oh,
Like
really?
yeah, exactly. I'm just like, I don't have any song ideas. I'm all dried up now, so I have to rest for like a few months and work on something else. And so after releasing Alter Ego, I had just this dry spell for all the way up to like the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time August hit, I was like, okay, I'm ready to write again. And so yeah, exactly. So that's how my working process works. It's a little
Yeah.
different from most people who write all the time.
You know, it's kind of like a cocoon period. Just like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna sit back a little while, absorb some stuff, and then we'll kick out something new every so often. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe another good comparison would be like a bear's hibernation period.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, I'm so exhausted now. I'm gonna go take a nap for like 3 months.
I like it. It's kind of like I mean, because I keep going back to the same thing, but it's like on that first track where you say that you're back,
Yeah,
and then you're like, wait, am I saying that every single time? And I'm like, well, actually, no, that makes a lot of sense now. No,
yeah,
she's like, yeah, no, I took some time off, and now I'm back. Oh, yeah,
yeah. I'm gonna make it a thing. Next time
yeah,
I release an album, I'm also gonna say I'm back. And that whole thing, like saying I'm back is like that's that's a
that's a
nod
trope.
to like,
Yeah,
that's a trope. That's a nod to like Slim Shady, who's stuff like I grew up with. Right. And like I know is like one of those examples where I take a lot of inspiration from this kind of flippant attitude.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, like not everything that I make sounds like that. I have a wide range, as you said.
There's a lot of range too. I mean, like just going back to kind of what you're saying about what you grew up with, and I think
Mhm.
you mentioned before, that whole idea of not being really too much in the West in terms of what you grew up with, like
Yeah,
90s
yeah.
content and stuff like that. I mean, for the people listening, kind of what was your experience growing up? Like, where?
That's a great question. I grew up in Taipei uh, for the first 18 years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't exposed to a lot of the American media that people are exposed to. Like, I know basically nothing about Star Wars except The Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy.
Okay.
I've never watched the original trilogy. I know that this sounds sacrilegious, but I've
I
never
mean, I'm
watched.
one of the few people who hate Star Wars, so
Okay.
you're fine.
Yeah, Mandalorian's great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Finished the Mandalorian, but it's like they had a lot of references to previous canons and
Mm-hmm.
characters, and I didn't pick up on any of those references. I was like, haha, like funny armor man and funny green baby is like that's how I was watching the show. um, but yeah, my experience, I think that the biggest experience, the biggest influence that I had from that part of my life was Chinese music, actually. Like
Okay.
not traditional Chinese music, but Chinese pop, like
Mm-hmm.
C-pop. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of artists in C-pop that influenced the way that my pop songwriting has become, because a lot of C-pop is ballads. I don't
Okay.
write that many ballads, but the C-pop that isn't ballads are really interesting. Like I'm gonna give an example. One of the most famous Taiwanese artists in the world. His name is Jay Chow, right? And during the time that I was growing up, he was starting to release these like fusion rap pop songs. You know where I'm going with this, right?
I mean, I can kind of,
So
yeah,
yeah, he started his career off by singing ballads because
right.
Chinese people love ballads. But around maybe like the mid 2000s, which was really when my music taste started solidifying in my
Mm-hmm.
brain. Like that was where I was taking in all the hip hop and stuff. Like Nelly Furtado featuring Timbaland, Promiscuous Girl released in 2006. It's like shit like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
um that was also the time where Jay Chow started releasing these like fusion rap pop songs. And the production was really interesting. It was pop, but it also started to take on like kind of a hip hop element to it. And I really liked the sound of that. So I was
Mm-hmm.
really a big fan of him during that time. And then I think he got rich enough where he didn't care if his music sounded good anymore, and like he just kind of fell off. uh, but Jay Chow's
So
definitely
much
one
shade
of
thrown around. Honestly.
he's definitely one of like the Taiwanese legends,
Mm-hmm.
of the time that I was growing up. And there are a lot of artists like that who influenced me during that time. I don't really listen to C-pop anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's only because they started trying to imitate K-pop too much and doing a bad job. Where
Right.
Taiwan was seeing the success that Korea was having with their music, and they were like, we want to do that, but they didn't have either they didn't have the proper industry like infrastructure in place, or I'm not gonna say the talent wasn't there, but a
Mm.
lot of the Taiwanese production that I hear, that like music production that I hear that is trying to imitate the Korean productions, it just doesn't sound as polished, I think. And I think the Korean music industry is like a well-oiled machine, right? Like they've been doing this for years and years. Like they know how to craft this like perfect product for consumers, this glitzy, glamorous, like polished product of like beautiful idols. You know, it's like a
The
yeah,
time
it's
like it genuinely scares me, K-pop. Like
yeah, it's scary.
genuinely scares me what they can do with just manufacturing songs.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
it's manufactured like um assembly line. I mean, it sounds great, doesn't it? It just sounds like candy.
I
It
mean,
just sounds so good. And the lowest common denominator, not saying that K-pop is the lowest common
I
denominator,
know, I know.
but it's like that's actually a bad characterization. Lowest common denominator would be like, you know, pop music that's actually bad.
Yeah.
But a large demographic of normal people are able to consume K-pop and like enjoy it without
Mm.
really thinking about like, I think the processes that created that content. And I mean, K-pop just sounds so good and it looks so good, right? But like what's really going on behind the scenes? And I think we all know that it's like it can be an abusive industry.
But it's
uh
strange though when I look at that though, because it reminds me, like when you're not saying like your lack of experience with like 90s and Western things, of it, it just reminds me of boy bands and girl bands from the 90s
mhm.
and all that. And kind of we watched all that and we were into Take That and Spice Girls in the UK and everything was huge like that. And then you did find out, oh yeah, actually no, these people are like they aren't living happy lives.
Yeah,
We are
yeah,
consuming it. So to watch it happen again, but even on such a larger scale,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, I don't. You
I
want
mean, it's
someone to
just,
step in. Like,
I know it's just capitalism turned up to 11, right? It's just capitalism married with music. It's like, okay, we figured out the formula of like how to create these like perfect pop stars,
yep.
and get these stands to like post fan cams of them on Twitter every day. It's like devoted stands. Like, okay, we know how to get their devoted attention. Like, let's just turn it up to 11, just make this like a like this whole industry. And it's scary. Like I know I'm just repeating the same thing over and over again, but it works because it sounds so good. Like they have real musical pros behind the scenes
Yeah.
crafting those beats and like writing good songs for these people. And also, you know, fashion designers, these fashion advisors, makeup artists, like they know every piece of the puzzle comes together, like looks, voice coaching, production. Like it's kind of like a singularity in a way
Yeah.
of a music version. It's like all this technology and all the skills of human society come together to make this perfect pop idol. And like sometimes that isn't even enough. People don't want to see 3D people anymore. People don't want to see like human pop idols anymore. They just want to see Hatsune Miku.
I
Like
just, it's, I'm just saying, just like
yeah,
the way you describe it is like, so we did so well as a culture, as like a species. We had all
yeah,
these innovations. We did all of this. I
yeah.
mean, what we do in the end? We didn't cure anything, guys, but we figured out how to make perfect music. Like, we figured out how to make perfect music, and we figured out how to get people to buy it.
Yeah.
That was the peak.
And that was the peak, and it might not even be the peak. We might just keep going along and
What can
along.
you do above that, though?
Yeah, you can't do anything about it. And I think that, you know, that's the magic of technologies. Like we've invented so many things, and um but the incentives of what we invent, right?
Yeah.
Because we're working into capitalism, because capitalism is the way the world works, we evolve and we invent things to benefit capitalism. And like
Mhm.
our goals kind of model the things that we end up creating, right? And so like we figured out how to make people buy things. That's like a natural consequence of capitalism. You know, like same, you know, I would argue that Vaccine nationalism is also like a result of capitalism. Like the reason the vaccine's being delayed for so many countries is because Pfizer and Moderna don't want to share their formula, right? They want to profit off of it,
Yeah.
and that's because of capitalism. They want to earn money off of it. They want it to be exclusive to them, and so we can't solve this huge world problem that is eating away at the world because people want to make money off of it.
I think this is one of those things. It is such a monster of a thing, like
Mhm,
to the point where you can't comprehend it. Like your brain
mhm.
just goes, no, like
Yeah,
like I know it's there, and I know it's bad, and I know there's all these things which are happening with it, but I can't do anything with it.
yeah,
And if I do something, even like myself and you, just like create art to create art because I want to express myself, I want something cathartic. Capitalism will get hold of that at
yeah,
some point and then
yeah.
suddenly go, oh, well, we can manufacture catharsis now, guys.
Oh,
We figured out how to make emotional songs, and we figured out how to make artwork which makes you feel things and produce that. So you
yeah.
can just have that whenever you want. So you don't need to pay attention to anybody else.
That's the pop music machine for you, right? And that's where a lot of people who want to make the big bucks go. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I want to be in this industry now and like manufacture this feeling. And I think that's the same thing for like Hollywood blockbuster films too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the MCU universe, Marvel movies, like they million dollar film budget, multi-million dollar film budget to create these experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
The emotional experiences. And I'm okay. I don't want to hate on capitalism too much. Like it certainly has plenty of damaging effects, but we
Mm-hmm.
all live in the world of capitalism. There's nothing we could do about it, and we play into it, and I play
Of
into
course.
it. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be a hypocrite and say like, "Oh, I'm not a capitalist," right? I am a capitalist. We all are in some ways. But yeah, I would actually argue that there is a big divide between like art as a product and art as art now, and I think art as
Yeah.
art is coming from a lot of the indie artists. Um, and still there's like this separation bit between indie artists who don't have a manager and don't have a team and the indie artists that do.
Yeah.
Like when indie artists get a team and a manager, they are required to make stuff that is like more palatable. This isn't always true,
No.
but I think it's true with people with a label or for people um with major label backing, I guess.
Yeah.
Like at that point you're in the industry. I think the most interesting art is coming from people that are, kind of outside of the industry in a way. And it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to, how do I put this? Okay. Parasite was a great film,
Mm-hmm.
right? Parasite did not come out of Hollywood,
No.
right? And I think Parasite came out of an indie filmmaker at heart. Like Bong Joon-ho,
Mm.
he's famous in Korea, but like when you're famous in Korea, you're not famous in the entire world still.
No. Yeah. That's
So
very true.
he was not driven as much by that incentive as much as he wanted to make a good film.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a great film about capitalism.
Is
And it's so
is the
funny.
topic on hand?
Yeah. It's so funny watching all these like bigwig Hollywood people and like Elon
Yeah.
Musk saying like, "Oh, I love Parasite." It's like I wonder what that film is about.
We get that you see that so often though, like especially with I mean even not even kind of like business owners, but like politicians and things, where they'll tell you like their favorite songs and their favorite artists, and
Yeah,
you're sat there going, how are these your favorite artists when
yeah,
the music they make is against everything you stand for? Like,
exactly.
how is
Like
that a
when
thing?
Trump rallies are playing "A Fortunate Son,"
Yeah.
"A Fortunate Son," it's like that song doesn't mean what you think it means. And also when they play YMCA, it's like this is a song about gay people.
Maybe they do know. There's just
Maybe,
some real subtle
yeah.
messaging going on. I think that's important though. I think like as artists and as creators, I mean, I always say when I create things that my main goal when I do anything is essentially just to interrupt someone. That's all I'm actually trying to do with anything I create. Is
Yeah,
just I want it to be impactful enough that you just kind of look at it and go, oh, you may not like it, you may like it, but
yeah,
it stops you just for that second. And I think the value in that as artists gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's interesting we touched on kind of metal music, stuff like that.
Mhm.
and anime and kind of slipping into that, but because metal music got such a push that it did in the 2000s, with at least within the Western world, because it was an interruption post boy band times
Mm.
and post girl band times. It was that thing of being into new metal and goth and grebo, and that took a huge resurgence and pop punk, and everyone kind of came along. We're like, no, 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 we need to stand against that, and we need to just do something to interrupt everything. Of course, eventually it got capitalized as it would, and
Oh, that makes sense. I didn't know that it was a backlash to the boy band era. That's
well,
really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of essentially the at least in the UK, I mean, I can't speak from kind of US counterpoints because obviously I didn't grow up in the US. Um, but in the UK, it was very much kind of it came out of an initial need of metal music had been stuck in a bit of a standard for a while. It was classic bands like Iron Maiden and Zeppelin. They were still kind of dominating everything, and then the whole punk era came in, and it shook things up in such a way that it infected everything else and all of the music genres, and they realized that every so often you have to just push that boundary to make something slightly heavier or to make something which interrupts everything else. So then new metal kind of came in with rap and metal mixed together.
Oh, I love that stuff so much.
And it's everything I grew up on. And it was one of those things of just like, yeah, oh, it's rap. But rap
Yeah.
is the rap's like, yeah, rap's silly, guys. Like nobody listens to rap. Why would you listen to that? And they're like, oh no, we can put metal music over the top of it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's interesting. We like the sound of that.
Yeah.
And it just kind of it escalates again and again. So now all I can think is that maybe like Korea and everyone just needs metal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that they do have it. They do have there is like J metal and K metal and so that sort of thing.
See,
And
I only know
you know,
one J metal band, and I only know again like linking back. I only know of that because of anime.
which one is it?
So it's Maximum the Hormone,
Oh yeah, because
and
of Death, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
because of the end of Death Note, and but I've
Yeah.
never watched Death Note.
Okay.
I got introduced to anime through a friend whilst I was in college, and they
Mhm.
showed me Trigun, and I was like, I've never watched anime, and they're like, you'll enjoy Trigun. Just
Yeah.
watch Trigun, and I really loved it. And they were
Like
like, and then because we had similar music tastes, they threw me Maximum the Hormone and was like, you'll like this, but also it's related to this anime. And then that kind of
okay. Yeah.
mothballed for me to listen to like other stuff. But yeah, that's the only J
Yeah, they're great. I like Death Note. That's a good show. I need to
Yeah.
rewatch it. One of my favorite like anime analysis people on YouTube is watching Death Note right now. So I've been reconsidering like kind of watching it along with him.
Mhm.
This man is amazing. Like his name is Im and he goes by Film Buff
Okay.
on YouTube, but he is absolutely brilliant at picking up the smallest details in shows and predicting things like far in advance. Like I've learned so much from analyzing films from him about analyzing films and things that I'm watching, like and watching it with a more critical eye, but I
Mhm.
still can't get on his level. Like I'm still not noticing some of the small details that he's noticing. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Death Note is from 2007 and I think it's stood the test of time.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
it, it's still a classic. It's still a gateway anime for a lot of people. Like that's what they start with. It's short, which is a benefit of it.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's 27 episodes with each episode being about 25 minutes, just the standard length
Mhm.
for most anime. So it's a short, fast breeze through, and there are a lot of people who agree that the ending is not as good as it could have been, but I think the ending is fine. But yeah, it's a fun and interesting show.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I like it a lot.
I think
Uh,
like it's kind of I always think there's like a risk for people who've never seen anime of what
mhm,
the first one they will be introduced to is.
yeah,
So me and my
exactly.
friends recently we started a side podcast where we're deconstructing films and stories and everything like that. And we recently did Spirited Away.
Okay.
Our friend Jen's never seen Spirited Away
Oh God,
and
I
never
remember the
watched an
first
anime.
time I watched. Okay. What
Um,
happened?
so we said it to her. It was like, we're not going to explain what it is. We suggest watching it dubbed because we
Oh,
were like, the voice acting's good. so
Uh,
you'll be fine. It's your first introduction to this. Watch it dubbed. She didn't. She watched it in the original language, um, and we just got this series of texts whilst watching it of just like, what is this? What the fuck is this? I don't understand. Oh my god, this guy's got way too many arms. What? Now this guy's a fucking dragon. It just like escalated so badly. And I felt quite lucky that my introduction to anime had been, oh, his Trigun, his Cowboy Bebop, his,
uh-huh.
like little things like that, which were fairly accessible at the time.
Yeah.
And then like scaled into it. And obviously, I mean, I had Pokemon back in the day because
Yeah.
Pokemon was the sensation that it was.
Love
Um,
Pokemon.
and then even in Ghibli, like Howl's Moving Castle was probably the first Ghibli film I saw.
Uh-huh.
And it was,
First Ghibli film I saw was Spirited Away.
okay.
I was 8 years old. I was terrified.
That's really
It,
interesting.
it was so scary for me as a young child, especially when the parents got turned into pigs. I was like, holy shit, like I can't handle this. And then like Yubaba,
Yeah.
like she was so scary. I was freaked out by that shit. And like No Face was so scary. Okay, I rewatched it um a couple years ago when I was 21, and I had a totally different outlook on it. I was like, okay, I can understand how this is scary for a child, but now that I'm an adult, like I see that this is like it's very psychedelic inspired, you know. And I
Yeah.
feel like there are a lot of Japanese anime that are psychedelically inspired. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Miyazaki has had that sort of experience.
Hmm.
But yeah, it. I thought it was beautiful the second time I watched it, but I thought it was so scary the first time because, as you said, I had very limited experience with anime. Like, holy
Yeah.
shit, I broke down it the first time.
That was
uh,
something we discussed because we were saying that obviously it was made for tweens essentially as an audience, and we had this discussion at the end which was along the lines of, would you show this to a child? You know,
oh,
it was I was very much in the mindset of, yeah, I'd show this to a kid. Like
I see.
kids would love this. Like I watched as a kid, I watched like Labyrinth and like Muppet films
Ah,
and all these kinds of crazy things, and I
yeah,
was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like,
yeah. I'm not good with horror. I'm not good. It's weird because when I was young, I could even handle the Hunchback of Notre Dame. You know
really?
that scene where they're throwing tomatoes at Quasimodo, and I was just so upset by that. I was like, "Why are they throwing tomatoes at this guy?"
That
And it
makes
was
so
just so.
mean.
I know this is so mean. And like I watched Hunchback again when I was
Hmm.
14 years old. I was like, "This is amazing." Or 14? No, it was a little after. I think it was 14. Um, but yeah, I couldn't handle dark stuff as a kid. That's
Mm.
all I watch now. It's all I watch now. I watch the darkest, most upsetting stuff, and it's like just invigorates me, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't watch horror. I
So
can't
you don't.
handle. I
Wait, so
can't
you watch
handle like.
dark stuff, but you don't watch horror.
I watch psychological thrillers.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can agree. I mean, there's a difference between horror and gore, and yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind gore. I don't mind violence, but jump scares,
Hmm.
like horrifying faces, like that's gonna be stuck in my mind for like weeks. Like I don't mind violence. I don't mind, stylized Tarantino style violence.
Hmm.
But I don't think I have a hard time handling like actually scary stuff.
I find it quite strange because I like with horror, I find it very hard to get into horror.
Ah,
Like I'm watching it and like my suspension of disbelief just isn't there.
ah,
I'm just constantly just like, yeah, I
yeah.
don't really
I feel
mind.
that way with like high fantasy. Like I have a hard time getting into like Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
like that full
Yeah, just like full immersion in that like Middle Earth world. I'm just kind of like, like I don't really care about orcs.
So I'm kind of curious though, what do you watch with like anime stuff?
So I'm about to at 3 p.m. today, at 3:45 p.m. I'm gonna watch the newest episode of Attack on Titan.
Okay.
Uh, love that show. It is fantasy, but it's kind of like a historical revisionist fantasy in some ways. It's
Yeah.
inspired by history, inspired by fantasy,
I
and
thought you were about to say it was inspired by true events then, and I was just about to just walk away.
it's
Just like
it's somewhat inspired by true events, and I'm not gonna tell you how, but it's kind of modeled after the real world, just with giants that eat people,
yeah.
and it's so good. It is absolutely the best anime I've ever seen in my life, and it's one of the best shows that I've ever seen in my life too. Probably the best. And I'm not gonna tell you how it's good, but I'm just gonna say that the writing is
Yeah.
absolutely impeccable. Like the
Oh,
way that the
yeah.
story is laid out, like this man has thought about the story like decades in advance. And this is his first manga too. Like Isayama.
Really?
Yeah, like
Oh, I didn't know that.
Isayama submitted this manga to Jump magazine. Yeah, Jump magazine, which is one of the daily shonen weekly shonen manga that is like serialized in
Mhm.
Japan, and they rejected him. So he submitted to Kodansha instead, which is a monthly series. And Kodansha has made a killing from Attack on Titan manga sales, and I bet Jump is like kicking themselves in the shins right now, because it is like this man is like the anime Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Okay, like there are things that are referenced in season 1 that like play so heavily into season 4 that you would never expect. And like we're in season 4 right now, and a new episode is dropping every Sunday, and it is like the one thing that's keeping me alive during this pandemic. It's like every Sunday, Attack on Titan, let's go. It's like it makes me so excited, and today is Sunday, so I'm so psyched. But anyway, I love that show a lot.
Hmm.
I think it's really well written. It's really well animated. It's got amazing characters.
Yeah.
It's got really strong women. And not in like the Marvel kind of like, oh yeah, Wonder Woman. Oh, sorry, that's DC. Like Captain Marvel, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
strong and independent kind of way. But it's got really interesting female characters that are fleshed out, that have cool motivations,
Hmm.
uh, like very deep, rich backstories. They just treat their female characters with such respect,
Yeah.
which is not something that's very common in anime, unfortunately. And this is another thing, like going back to what you said earlier, you really have to be careful about the first anime you show someone, because if you choose the wrong one,
Yeah.
you could find something that's really misogynist
Yeah.
and like very like uncomfortably sexual, which is a large proportion of the anime out there. Like Attack on Titan is actually um one of the shows that is really popular that does not have fan service. And by fan service, I mean like, like titty
Yeah.
flashing,
Yeah.
or, that sort of thing. Um, and they just treat their female characters with so much weight, so
Mm.
much respect, so much gravity. And it's like all these characters could be male characters, and all the male characters could be female characters. Gender
Hmm.
doesn't really matter in this show. And like that's one of the things that I like a lot about it. And it's only one of the things. And the other thing that I love about this show is the soundtrack. It's the composer of this show is again probably like the Hans Zimmer of anime, because he just has such a good grasp of the emotions in this show,
Hmm.
and um, how to bring out some of the most emotional moments. And that's one of the things that I still listen to a lot on Spotify, is like the soundtrack of this show. But yeah, that's something that is definitely my favorite show. It was my first anime, after Spirited Away, I think, and
That's,
Pokemon, whatever. But
that's
it was
kind of
my first
crazy.
real anime, and I think
Yeah.
like it's a great, um, it's a great, how do I say it? It's a great gateway anime for people because
Yeah.
it doesn't have fan service. It's really well written. It's really well animated. It's got great characters, and it still has like this kind of, um, in some ways, it still has this like cheesy shonen vibe where it's like this, humans rising up against all odds, and
Yeah.
like that's a theme. Like, oh, I have to be stronger to defeat these enemies. Like that's a theme that's very common in anime,
Hmm.
and like it has that, and it's like very, it can be very inspiring, and it primes you for some of the other anime that's to come in your viewing experience, basically.
In
Yeah,
your learning experiences of finding out where anime can go and
exactly,
what it
exactly.
does. I agree. Like Attack on Titan was, I watched it a few years back. I'm not fully caught up with it, but it was one of those ones which it surprised me of how good it was.
Hmm.
Because I mean, like you say, there is a lot of anime out there which is very very questionable,
Yeah,
and so I'm whenever anyone recommends anything to me, I'm like, I
yeah,
don't know if I'm gonna
yeah,
watch this.
yeah.
Um, and like someone messaged, was it is it Kill the Kill? Like, oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
someone sent me that once, and I watched like an episode. I was like, what are you even showing me? And I don't
Mhm.
want this.
I tried
Um,
watching Kill la Kill. I got like 8 episodes in. I was like, I don't.
I couldn't get past episode one. It was, but then someone recommended One Piece to me, and that turned out to be quite good.
Yeah.
And Attack on Titan, I stumbled across, like,
Mhm.
again in like the most random, like I was like, oh, just in like a random forum, and someone sent me a picture of one of the Titans like running through a field, and I was like, I need to know more about this again. So I went into a little deep dive of it to find out what
Yeah.
was going on. And yeah,
Yeah.
like you say, it's extremely well written, and it
Yeah.
kind of to me it kind of shook up what anime should be.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that it takes some of the best things that anime can do,
Mm-hmm.
like the 3D maneuver gear, like that would be really hard to recreate in a live action setting.
Yeah,
And like the Titans, can you make that? Can you even make that in CGI and make it look convincing? Like I
yeah,
highly doubt it, right? So it takes the best things that anime can do in that medium and it marries it with the best things that like top class like world class writing can do,
yeah.
like the writing's like TV but the animation is like anime, so that's how I tend to look at it.
It's a
Yeah,
good blending of so many different things, which
yeah,
I think to kind of if we want to bring this to a kind of like a topic of all the things we discussed, because we've stretched the bar on kind of what we were discussing.
yeah, it's
um,
fine. I'm very excited about talking about all this stuff.
it's what we've been saying throughout this entire thing of it's very much that if you're going to make something,
Yeah,
it should at least challenge whatever came before you. It
exactly.
should be at least a push away from whatever is there, and it
Yeah,
should be personal at the same time.
exactly.
And I think
Yeah,
that's very valuable in terms of
yeah.
artists.
Yeah, and I think that any anime that does that and pushes the boundaries of
Mm-hmm.
like what people expect anime to be is like world class in my book. And like it should make you feel things. So, yeah. I have a friend, his name is Daniel. He's been my friend since first grade. He's my best friend. We talk about anime a lot and he is the one who like recommends things to me and like he knows my taste and he knows how I will find something and like he's made some dud and recommendations before where he's like, "Oh, you should watch this," and I'm like, "This is gross. This is too much fan service." Um, but he has generally recommended some great things, and another one of the shows that he recommended was Hunter x Hunter. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
Okay. Highly recommended. I finished it during the quarantine last year, May 2020, and I think that that is another show that breaks kind of the boundaries of what shonen is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So like like the shonen trope of like, oh yeah, like young protagonist hero, like
Yeah.
I want to prove myself, I want to be stronger, a training arc, we're going to build up our powers, that sort of thing. So Hunter x Hunter has that and starts off with that. But like very soon it starts to like branch off into kind of its own thing. And still has like a great story to it and it still embodies kind of like the core of the shonen,
Mm-hmm.
but they break a lot of boundaries in terms of I think how characters are treated, like main characters and their backstories, their depths and their emotional state. And yeah, and I think that it subverts the shonen trope really well. That's another thing that I really like is subversions. Like
Yeah.
anything that subverts a trope is like I love it. Like Undertale subverts the RPG.
Yeah.
Like Madoka Magica subverts the magical girl genre. Evangelion subverts the mech genre. I'm not a big fan of Evangelion.
No.
Uh, but yeah, I think Hunter x Hunter is like one of the best subversions of shonen out there. And I think that it is like Evangelion if it was actually thought out and well done. It might be a weird comparison, but
No.
Hunter x Hunter is just such a brilliant show
Yeah.
with like such endearing characters. Like you'll fall in love with the characters, even if you're okay with the story, like the
Mm-hmm.
characters are so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think again, like I think, yeah, subversion of expectation is something which really gets you into anything. And
Yeah.
I think it's the same with kind of music, and what you're saying with the music you create. There is that very visual moment of you. If you find you through one track, the next track you listen to might not be in any way kind of the same as what you were previously experienced. And
Yeah.
that's a great thing of just, yeah, it's artists going, oh, you expected me to produce this. Well, no, I wanted to produce this over here.
It actually was this.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
do whatever I can to subvert you, and eventually I'll just get into K-pop.
Yeah, there's some K-pop that I really like. I really respect the the perfection that they bring to the craft. And there's some like really subversive K-pop too. I mean, like I always bring up Psy, like Gangnam Style, because like I think that he really subverted a lot of the things that K-pop is known for, and ended up succeeding and becoming a world sensation. So yeah, he's another one of those artists that I really respect, because his music sounds amazing and he's subverting expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good message for any artist as we kind of bring this to an end. Is just if you're just going to make something, try your best as you can to subvert.
Yeah, subvert expectations and make people feel things. Those are my two goals. If you want to sum this up in just two goals, subvert expectations, make people feel things.
I think that's very good points to round this out for. Well, thank you for coming and talking to me, Lex. Hopefully it hasn't been
very
too
welcome.
painful.
No, not at all. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for engaging me in this conversation. And thanks for inviting me to be on your show.
We have no idea what's coming next, because clearly you're going to just go out and subvert expectations, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to release like a 70s Beatles style pop album.
I like it. I mean, that's subverted my expectation, because instantly our brain just went country. Country album. We're going to see rhinestones and horses. That's going to be the next album.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I love it.
Well, thank you for coming on. And I think on those notes, we will talk to these guys later.
Talk to you soon. Bye.